I never expected my quiet Saturday to turn into the beginning of a secret I'd carry like a second skin. It was supposed to be a simple task, clearing out the old office storeroom after our department's relocation. My boss's son, Leo, was helping out temporarily between college semesters. I barely knew him beyond polite greetings and company parties. I had no idea how lonely I really was until that afternoon. My husband and I had been married for 8 years. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything anymore. We used to talk about everything. Now, we mostly passed each other like shadows in the same hallway. He loved me, I think. He just forgot how to show it. Leo wasn't even supposed to stay long, but box after box, we began talking. Not just small talk, real conversations, about music, dreams, regret. He asked about the book I kept in my bag. Noticed how I hummed when I was anxious. It was the first time in years someone saw me, not the employee, not the wife, but me. At one point, I slipped on the stairs carrying a crate, and he caught my arm. His hands lingered a little too long. Our eyes locked. I should have stepped back. Instead, I leaned in. We kissed. It was hesitant at first, then urgent. Hungry, but it wasn't just the kiss. It was everything behind it. Years of silence. Nights pretending. Mornings waking up beside someone who stopped asking how I felt. That kiss cracked something wide open in me. We didn't go further that day. But what shocked me more than the kiss was what followed. The flood of guilt, yes, but also a sense of being alive. I looked at myself in the mirror that night and realized I had forgotten what it felt like to be desired, to be touched with intention, to be spoken to like I mattered. Over the next few weeks, Leo and I talked more. Texted, nothing graphic, just meaningful, the emotional kind of intimacy that makes you question whether it's worse than physical cheating. Maybe it is. I started lying to my husband, to myself. I'm staying late at work. I have errands, but I wasn't seeking sex. I was addicted to being understood. Then one evening it happened. The line that had already blurred disappeared entirely. I won't lie and say I regretted it in the moment. I didn't. In that hotel room, I felt 20 again. I felt real. I felt everything I'd missed for years. But guilt has a strange aftertaste. It doesn't hit immediately. It simmers, slow and deep. Now I live with the weight of what I did. I didn't just cheat on my husband. I betrayed the version of myself who thought she'd never be that woman. I became someone I swore I'd never be, because I was emotionally starved, and someone finally offered me water. I haven't told anyone. Not my friends, not even Leo anymore. We ended it before it could turn into something neither of us could walk away from clean. But I still think about it. I think about what it means to be touched with meaning. The morning routine had become a dull, automated dance. Coffee poured into the same chipped mug, silent glances exchanged over headlines neither of us read anymore, and the sound of him closing the garage door as he left for work before I even finished buttering my toast. There were no fights, no slamming doors, just silence that grew roots in every corner of our marriage. It's strange how you can share a bed with someone and still feel entirely alone. He still asked me how my day was sometimes, but it was like asking out of obligation, like checking off a list. I stopped answering honestly a long time ago. We used to talk about everything: books, plans, frustrations, sex, dreams. Now everything is surface level. If we went out to dinner, we scrolled through our phones more than we looked at each other. The physical connection disappeared quietly. At first, it was just stress, then fatigue. Eventually, it became normal. I convinced myself that it was what long-term love looked like: comfortable, predictable. Until comfort started to feel like neglect. There were days I stood in front of the mirror after a shower and just stared at myself, trying to remember the last time I felt desired. Not just touched out of routine or necessity, but actually wanted. I used to be confident, used to wear perfume to bed just because. Now I'd pull on oversized shirts, wrap my hair up in a bun, and lie beside a man who scrolled until he fell asleep. He didn't do anything wrong. That's what made it worse. It wasn't malice. It was indifference. I remember once trying to initiate something, just to test the water. I wore that dress he used to love, asked if he wanted to go for drinks. He said he was too tired, maybe next weekend. I sat on the edge of the bed that night and stared at his back, wondering if he noticed the way my voice cracked when I said okay. He didn't. The emotional gap didn't form overnight, but the day I realized I was the only one trying to close it, something in me shifted. I felt invisible in my own home. I started talking less, smiling less. I buried myself in work, took on more projects, stayed out longer. Not because I was running to something, but because I was slowly disconnecting from what I had once held so tightly. You don't wake up wanting someone else. You just slowly stop wanting the person you're with, and you try to convince yourself that you're imagining it. Until one day, someone notices you. The loneliness became a quiet ache I carried everywhere. At the grocery store, I'd find myself envying couples who laughed over what kind of pasta to get. I missed laughter. Not the polite kind we exchanged during social events, but the kind that made your eyes tear up and your stomach ache. It had been years. I don't even remember the last time we truly laughed together without a screen or a dinner party between us. When I agreed to help clean out the office storage that day, it wasn't because I needed the extra hours. It was because I needed an escape. Any environment that didn't have the scent of detachment lingering in the air. I didn't know Leo well. He was just the boss's son, young, helpful, kind. I didn't look at him that way, not at first, but something changed in me that day, not because of him, but because he accidentally held up a mirror. He asked me questions my husband hadn't asked in years. He noticed things I forgot were even part of me, that I read Neruda, that I hum quietly when I'm stressed, that I pause before laughing like I'm not sure I'm allowed to feel joy anymore. It wasn't attraction at first, it was recognition. He saw me, and that feeling, after so many years of emotional starvation, felt like breath returning to lungs I didn't realize had collapsed. I didn't cheat that day, but I emotionally woke up. I walked out of that office realizing just how numb I had become in my marriage, and that numbness, more than desire, more than any flirtation, was the real warning sign. A woman doesn't just break her vows on impulse. She starts losing herself one unmet emotional need at a time. When you spend years feeling invisible, the moment someone truly sees you is more dangerous than any physical temptation. I didn't dress differently that day. I wasn't looking for trouble. I was in old jeans, an oversized work shirt, and dusty sneakers. My hair was pulled back, and I was ready to spend the afternoon lifting boxes and labeling old files for shredding. I thought it would be just another task, another excuse to avoid the silence at home, but the way Leo looked at me wasn't filtered through indifference. He looked like he was present, and it startled me. He was polite, hands tucked into his hoodie pockets, voice calm, boyish in that harmless kind of way. He called me ma'am at first. I laughed and told him never to say that again. It made me feel old. He laughed too, the kind of laugh that's effortless, not forced. I don't even remember what I said next, but I remember how he looked at me when I said it, like it mattered. It had been so long since I felt like my words mattered. As we sorted through the old files and dusty office chairs, we started talking about everything and nothing. He asked about the poetry book in my purse. I told him it was Pablo Neruda. He said he liked Bukowski, but thought Neruda's words were more human. I didn't expect that kind of answer. He asked questions no one asked anymore. What made you love poetry? What were you like at 23? What would you be doing if life had gone a little differently? Nobody had asked me questions like that in years. Not even my husband, especially not my husband. The more we talked, the more the room around us faded. It wasn't about attraction at first. It was about emotional closeness, emotional warmth, a pulse. That's what it felt like, a pulse in a life that had been flatlining for years. He wasn't flirting, at least not in a way that was overt. He just cared about the answers. When I told him I used to dance when I was younger, he smiled and said, "I can see that. You have this energy about you. I bet you lit up the room." I almost cried, not because it was romantic, but because it was true. I used to light up rooms. I had forgotten that. There was this one moment, small but piercing. I reached up to pull down a heavy box from the top shelf, and it tipped forward. Leo instinctively reached for it, but instead he caught me. His arm went around my waist, steadying me. His touch wasn't inappropriate. It was protective, but the way we froze in that moment, everything else stopped, the air thickened. He looked down at me and didn't move his arm right away. I looked up at him and didn't step back. Time suspended. I don't know how long we stood like that, 3 seconds. 5. It felt like forever. Then he gently let go and cleared his throat. "Careful," he said with a nervous chuckle. I nodded and turned away, pretending to fuss with the files, but inside, my heart was pounding like it hadn't in years. It wasn't lust. It was emotional intimacy crashing into me at full speed. I realized then that I was in deep trouble. That night, I lay beside my husband, staring at the ceiling. His breathing was steady. He was already asleep. I closed my eyes and tried to force the thoughts away, but Leo's voice echoed in my head. The way he said, "I can see that," like he meant it, like he saw the version of me I had buried. I didn't text Leo. I didn't reach out, but I kept replaying the conversation, the way he looked at me, the gentle way he touched my arm when he said goodbye. I was starved for attention, not just romantic attention, but human attention, being noticed, being heard. And Leo, unknowingly or not, gave me a taste of that again. It made me realize how easy it is to slide into danger when you're emotionally malnourished. You don't crave sex. You crave connection, a look that lingers a second too long, a question that breaks the routine, a moment of shared laughter that makes your insides flutter like you're not just someone's wife, but a woman with desires, stories, emotions, layers. I told myself it was harmless, that nothing happened, that I was reading too much into it, but deep down, I knew something had begun, and it wasn't about Leo, it was about me. A part of me had woken up, a part I didn't know I'd numbed, and once you feel that spark again, it's almost impossible to pretend you're still okay living without it. It started with the excuse of needing help again. The office still had files that needed sorting, boxes that hadn't been moved. My boss casually mentioned that Leo was available if I needed assistance. I paused, just a breath, but long enough to feel the conflict rise in my chest. I nodded, trying to mask the mix of anticipation and guilt already bubbling underneath. I told myself it would be like last time. Harmless conversation, a few laughs, and nothing more. But that was already a lie. Things were different now, because I was different.